How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It's good to be here. I've been looking forward to this one. So, as some of you may be aware, Garry Nolan was originally due to join me for my science panel that I hosted last week sometime, which was great. But you know, these things don't always pan out. So Garry graciously agreed to give me a one-on-one interview, and here we are. So let's jump straight into it, guys. Let's bring in my guest for the day, Garry Nolan. Garry, thank you so much for being here.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah. I thought I'd love to kickstart this off just to get your initial thoughts on the recent congressional hearings and what you thought of them.
Well, I thought they were remarkable, despite the fact that, an alien didn't materialize on the congressional floor for everybody. The fact that people were asking these questions in a public forum at that level of government, I mean, it really is a first time. I mean, people will tell me it happened 40 years ago, et cetera, but at least in living memory, it is a first time where you saw such incredibly well thought out questions for the people, the two DoD representatives, first of all. And second, because there was the social media aspect of it, there was very quick reaction to the things that were being said. And as well, you could just see it on the faces of the Congress people. You could just see it. You could read their minds. They were saying, "You're lying to us. We can see you dancing around the questions." And the reaction that several of them had afterwards in response to reporters and things was exactly what you would want. Basically was, "We're calling bullshit.
Yeah.
And we're not going to let you get away with this. And if you think this is the last time we're going to be asking questions, you've got another thing coming." And, I already know that there are additional hearings coming, when they will happen, not quite sure, but probably within the next few months on the Senate side, and as well, probably a follow-up congressional one. So to me, that's exciting. And it's a sea change. I think a lot of people who live in let's say, the so-called disclosure world, are wondering why, the whole world isn't on fire about these announcements. And I think the answer is twofold. One, there has been enough of a slow drip over the years that people are accommodating themselves to, the fact, well, you ask a lot of people and they go, "Well, of course it's here." So, and the other thing is something I've been pointing out is if it doesn't change your life in a moment-to-moment basis, if it doesn't affect the cost of fuel and the, what you're putting on your table and who's going to pick up the kids, it's just another fact of life now.
Yeah.
And so it really will only affect us when there is some sort of, let's say, communication. I would argue that what we're seeing is communication right now.
Yeah.
And that if some sort of technology inference comes from understanding how these things are operating, right? Or if, frankly, we get a hold of some of the actual pieces of the technology and can either, one, prove that it is indisputably not of human origin, or we figure out a function of one of these objects that we can replicate that allows us to do something we couldn't do before.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
That's great. No, I like the fact because a lot of people really were disappointed and they felt like Moultrie and Bray, I think it was, were just either lying or holding back or just really sort of gatekeeping the information further. But I saw a lot of positives from it.
Well, I mean, I don't even think that they were gatekeeping or necessarily lying. I think that what it proved was that they were completely not read into the facts. One of the best ways to hide something is to put people out in front who know nothing.
Yeah.
So if they know nothing, they can tell nothing.
No, that's a good point. And one thing that a lot of people have been discussing is this word amnesty, which I know that you were more happy using the term immunity. So do you feel like that is something that will be coming? Do you know if it's happening or not?
Well, I know it's happening for sure.
Okay.
It's 100% happening. I was speaking to some people about it on the inside, and the the wording is, in the 80%, 90% done point. I mean, I was only picking on the words immunity versus amnesty because from a legal standpoint, it does have a difference, at least in the U.S. And amnesty actually is a broader term and can, in some special cases, include, pre facto forms of immunity. But from a legal perspective, you do want to use the word immunity because let's say that you're an individual who is thinking about, all right, well, maybe I should come forward. Then I talk to my lawyer, right? Or I'm the person and I talk to my lawyer. And I say, well, they're offering amnesty, and my lawyer will, if they're worth the money I'm paying them, tell me that, well, you don't want amnesty, you want immunity because you want predestined lack of liability.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's the only reason for using the word, because if you use the word amnesty and people who aren't, let's say, legally aware, and they go to their lawyer and their lawyer tells them, well, amnesty won't do you any good, then they might go back in the closet. So you just want to prime the field with the right words so that it accelerates and you don't get through a lot of back and forth. That's unnecessary, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'd like to just take it back a few years, and I can't remember clearly if I heard you say this or not, but what was your relationship to the Atip program? And I mean, Atip under the Pentagon with Lou Elizondo. Were you associated with them at all over the years?
I mean, so Lou probably knew about me long before I knew about Lou.
Right.
Because Lou was deeply involved all the way across. And I'm not going to get into the details of, of that, because there's people picking apart the words in ways that, are just frankly stupid. So I was involved with the efforts that Lou was behind the scenes, let's say, funding or enabling, or even though I didn't know that Lou was there.
Right.
Now I knew of Jay Stratton, and I knew of the stuff that he was doing, but he was sort of the in-between of Lou and me. It was Jay and a few others. So the reason why people showed up at my door that day was probably, and I don't know what the specifics of it, at least in part instigated by Lou.
Right. Okay. Now with Atip, I mean, I'm sure you're aware of the Atip slides, and in particular Atip slide 9. And there were a few points on there, and I wondered if you had any knowledge on these specific.
Can you show me? You have Atip slide 9. I don't know what's on it.
I do. I could bring it up if you just bear with me. I had it up a moment ago.
I'm a scientist. I need facts.
Yeah. No, of course. Let me find a high-res copy. Oh, no, it's a video. Bear with me. Sorry, I should have been prepared. I wrote them down, but I guess it's always good to see the file, see the image. I can't find it. I'll keep looking, but I'll say the first one.
Come back to it.
Yeah. Well, the first one was cognitive human interface. And I wondered if that was something that you came across at all.
I mean, I have spoken about it with Kit a few times, but I don't know really what that is about. I mean, if it's meant to imply that these objects appear to be consciously moved, then that might be it. But other than that, I don't know.
Okay. Oops. I just had it. This is it here.
Okay.
I need to zoom. Oh, bear with me. The next one I wanted to mention is something as well that you may have come across. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. Bear with me. Sorry. I wasn't prepared for that. The alteration and manipulation of biological organisms I guess that's relating to UAP, but have you come across any manipulation or alteration maybe before and after a sighting or an interaction?
Alteration or manipulation, are you talking about Hitchhiker Effect, or you're talking about people?
I guess it's such a broad term. It could be anything. Like,
gosh, I mean, no. I mean, when I've been involved in, let's say, post facto analysis of an event of some kind, we bring in trained observers. We've brought in a trained observer, and sometimes even a trained psychologist, to listen to the let's say the experiencer or the witness, for basically looking for those emotional body cues that are either one, telling you that they're hoaxing it.
Sure.
That's usually your first concern, or two, picking up on their anxiety, their anxiety tics that you can see, which can be indicative of a truth, right?
Yeah.
And obviously we don't have these people hooked up to lie detectors or anything like that. But it's it's important that you don't just take people and what they say at their word.
Yeah.
Especially if you're talking about something that is maybe more an interpretation of an observation than the observation itself. This is my CIA handler here.
I think she's become quite the famous dog online
Yes,
recently.
she has.
One thing I did want to mention as well is in these studies that you've done of people, and maybe yourself and your colleagues, were delta, theta, and alpha brainwaves ever factored into what they look like maybe before or further down the line after an experience?
No, that's never been done. That requires very specific equipment to measure correctly. I'm not going to just buy something off of Amazon to do that kind of stuff. Because the devil's in the details, and you want the kind of equipment that will give you detailed analysis. And I mean, unless everybody's running around with those things on their heads, how are you going to know when the stuff's going to show up? And of course, the biggest problem with let's say the so-called science of this stuff is that it is, although it's reproducible, it's not reproducible on demand.
Yeah.
And so you can't necessarily have all of the materials at the ready for this. You certainly don't have it before. You don't have it during, and you're lucky if you can get it after. And after is, within a time frame that, whatever happened is still, there.
Yeah.
It was the same problem that I had when they asked me to study the blood of these people with the instrument that my lab had developed. That in some cases it was years after the event, and so there just wasn't going to be a signature.
Yeah.
Unless it was like totally drastic, and of the analysis we did, we never saw anything like that.
Right.
That couldn't be explained by just the normal noise of human variation.
I see. Right. Yeah. What about the immune system? Because obviously that plays such an important part, and it's almost separate, or I've heard it suggested that it's kind of separate from the brain. It has its own brain. It remembers everything the body's dealt with throughout its life. Is that come into the research at all?
Well, that was really what I was saying, is that what we were looking for was some sort of a change that you would expect from normal. I mean, what is normal is a huge problem in and of itself, because much of your immune system, frankly, can depend on everything from what you last got infected with to, what you ate this morning, and is it allergy season or not? I mean, the subtle memory that is probably the best indicator of long-term effects are the B cells and the T cells.
Okay.
And they encode into proteins literally the memory of what we call epitopes is the term, but it's really the shapes of the diseases that they've encountered. I mean, that's what the whole COVID vaccine is about. It's giving people a shape that looks like what COVID is, and therefore you remember it. But what my lab is known for is what's called systems immunology, that the memory of an event is not just those specific things, but the network of interactions of cells and the correlations across the numbers of cells and their activation states that are actually sort of a broader memory system. It's sort of the shape of the web is the memory that I was looking for, but we could see no signature that that told us anything worthwhile. You really need something almost immediately after. But then of course you need before, and the only thing that you can really do with somebody's before is rely upon 300 normals and say, well, this is most likely what the before looked like, and now they are significantly deviated from the before of most normals.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It does, absolutely. And I guess sometimes when you're limited on that, you have to draw conclusions, like you say, from possibilities and that.
Right.
And what would you say is the most standout result or even strange result you've come across during your studies when it comes to UAP?
Well, I think it's more an inference than a result per se, and this is the caudate putamen thing.
Right.
That I'll try again to make sure that people don't misunderstand what I'm saying. It was a side observation that amongst the people who were damaged, that cohort of individuals had this caudate putamen phenomenon of the increased density of neural connections. And it was not saying that the observations or the experience caused it. It was really saying that the people who came forward were more likely to have it than not, well above background levels of people who have it, 1 in 200. Now, whether that is what you would call cohort bias, meaning it's just people who go into these areas of, let's say, high functioning areas are more likely to have it, or whether they are more likely to see something because they can recognize something for what it is and not just think it's part of the background. I don't know, but I use the example of the, in psychology class, people, you're shown a video and told to watch the person playing with the basketball and count how many times it goes, and then the gorilla walks across. You don't see it, and I failed that test, as I say. I was completely disbelieving that I thought they were fibbing, but it's I think it's an element of that people won't necessarily see it because it somehow doesn't stand out as obvious. Maybe it's kind of like, it's called the mirror test for animals, right? Can the animal recognize that it's itself in the mirror?
Right.
Or that it's actually seeing anything in the mirror, or not? And there's a sort of a level of intelligence. And I'm sorry, I'm going to make the hypothesis that people with this feature seem to be more likely to be intelligent.
Right.
Or at least a kind of intelligence. It's a form of intelligence.
Now, when it comes to like different theories of consciousness, some people think that it's emergent, others think that it's like just fundamental. Which way would you lean more towards?
Well, I sorry if I sound like I'm straddling the fence. I think it's both. I mean, I think consciousness is fundamental, but that consciousness needs to be organized. And so it is emergent because the brain puts together matter in a way that organizes the fundamental units of consciousness into something which is self-aware, is how I would position it. There's a physicist I've spoken about before. Where is his document? I think his name is Burkhard Heim, German physicist. And, he basically has let's say a theory of space-time, sort of a unifying set of equations that basically says, one of the outcomes of his way that he thinks the universe is organized could, at a certain level of organization of matter, the brain, certain shape, etc., by virtue of that shape and electrical impulses, etc., that instantiates an object, which he basically says is both self-aware and independent of the underlying thing that created it in the first place. It's kind of like some mad scientist's thing that they make in the laboratory, and the technical help says, no, don't do it, don't do it. He pulls a switch, and bedlam ensues because they've created something that is runs amok. So I think, frankly, that's a little bit of what's going on with consciousness. I don't think personally that you can explain it by just consciousness, by just the neurons firing in the brain. It's not all here. There's something that it's organizing something behind the scenes, I think. Right. Do I have any proof of that? No. It's just a hypothesis, and it's much more fun. To me, it's much more fun to think that the world is a bigger thing than what's currently explained. And because the material side of things does not appear to explain it, you have to consider alternative explanations. Yeah. Doesn't mean you have to go all the way to the woo to explain it, but it needs to be part of the solution set, because you don't want to take something off the table that might be the explanation, because you could be staring at the answer right in your face, and you're busy trying to prove everything else except the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Now, when it comes to consciousness as well, people often talk about things like CE5, and that they can actually contact these beings or craft to come in and show themselves. But could it be possible that UAP and whatever it represents is just omnipresent? It's always around us, and just every now and again it blinks in, and it's maybe right place at the right time, more than, oh, I did that.
Well, I think it is. I mean, and obviously, if you're looking for something, then it's more likely to be observed because you're looking for it. I mean, I walk through the forest and I don't see a lot of birds, but if I was a bird watcher, I might notice, I might be able to tick things off in my list of birds I want to have seen, if I'm looking for it. If I'm looking for it, it might be there. If I'm calling for it, maybe that's something that shows up as well, more likely.
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it.
I've never done a CE5. I have lots of friends who claim that it works. Well, to tell the truth, actually, I did go up into the Santa Cruz Mountains once with a friend of a friend, actually a friend of Jacques Vallée's, and he had been actually a doctor at Stanford for a while, and he lives up in a cabin up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, deep into the forest up there. I didn't even know it was. I might as well be in the Amazon rainforest, and we did basically sit out one night with binoculars and whatnot, and there were some strange objects moving around that I was like, oh, that's odd, but it was. Whatever it was subtle. It wasn't like, hey, we're here, here we are. But he was able to make some things happen.
That's interesting. And this is the one thing that I struggle with when it comes to CE5, is that these things, if they appear for people, they only seem to appear at a distance. And I find that, why can't we just have one where, it came right up to me? Maybe it has. And I'm just
maybe it's their rule. Right? Maybe they have protocols on their side that say, let's say that the protocol is, don't give them the evidence that they can use to show to others. Only give them the evidence that can convince them, the observer. And maybe it's all about self-realization and not something you can put on the front page of the New York Times.
Hmm.
But I also, I think people are looking for a one size fits all answer as if it's just one thing. It might be that this is many things.
Yeah.
And that what the Navy pilots are seeing is very different than the other things that people see. And I've been going back and forth with someone here in California, trying to get down to where he lives, because he has one of these situations where they see something multiple times, and it's one of these things that drops material, and he sees certain movement patterns that occur right before it drops material. In this case, the material is a metal.
Right.
And I'm actually trying to get Jacques. I want to bring Jacques to the situation because he has sort of a Sherlock Holmes approach to seeing things and asking questions but it needs to be on site, to grok and gestalt the witness and the situation.
I mean, sorry to interrupt. That sounds much like the Council Bluffs, Iowa case.
It is. No, and that's what I've said a couple of times, that there's several of these, and there are several historical ones, and then there's one that is still ongoing. And that's about as reproducible a situation as I could ever hope for. And it's right in my backyard.
And that's a recent case.
Yeah. And
Wow.
it's still ongoing. And so, I'll go spend a weekend looking into it. It'll be a fun trip.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating that there's a recent one that's almost similar. And with regards to the Council Bluffs, is that still being analyzed, the materials from that one? Because I know Jacques looked at it, or is that kind of been done now?
I mean, it's done. I mean, it's done to at least my satisfaction with the, well, it's done in, there was a singular point about publishing that paper, and that was showing people that you could put stuff through a real peer review. And as much as I appreciate that there are journals out there that deal with let's say the paranormal, or and there's a new journal coming out, of UAP research, and hopefully that will get the kind of respect I think it deserves. But before that occurs, before they get the kind of respect that they deserve, the fact that you can publish something in a mainstream journal was important. And it wasn't just an opinion piece. It was a study, because you can get an opinion piece in anywhere.
Yeah.
And so it was really to show people that it can be done. And here was kind of a pipeline, or a template of how to do it. Now, I do think that there's more that can be done on it. Okay. Deeper analysis. Frankly, we did an embarrassingly, low level analysis of the materials. And I'll underscore the fact that this stuff it's expensive to do. Unless you have a materials analysis laboratory, getting somebody to help you do the study, renting the equipment time, doing the analysis afterwards, it's somebody's time, right? It's my time, frankly. And it's so far. So, you're talking a laboratory with about probably $5 to $10 million worth of equipment. And so, because you need like 10 different kinds of instruments. Now, there are laboratories like that exist, and you can rent time on them. But for a full and detailed analysis, you're probably going to spend about $100,000 per detail to give a metallurgist or a materials analysis person the kind of data that will satisfy them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, where it's not just thrown around. here, there, and everywhere. So yeah. Now I know initially we said 30 minutes. I've just got a few follower questions from the chat as well, if you don't mind. First one from Dolan's Bar. Do we know if more UAP are originating from the oceans or the outer atmosphere?
Gosh, I don't know that there's been enough of a statistical analysis. I mean, who's going to collect that kind of information except people on the ocean? And the people most likely to see it are the Navy, and the Navy is both over and under, and the USOs, let's say, observation of something moving underwater is, as what I found, it appears to be a little bit more classified in terms of it's harder to get information out from people, because I think we just don't want people to know where our submarines are or what they're capable of.
That makes sense. Absolutely.
But I mean, just look at the announcement today from NASA.
Yeah.
Saying that they're entering the fray in a positive sense. So, you put that kind of data together with what Avi Loeb is doing, and his, he's got quite a network of individuals who are on the ready once data becomes available to help analyze it. So, I think it's exciting times to be living in. Is it moving as fast as we would want, or is it going to snap your fingers and everything happens? No, but more than I ever dreamed of.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to a question here from Lara. She says, has Mr. Nolan's study looked at the changes in the pineal gland of experiences? And if so, what has he found?
No, we haven't. I mean, what would you measure? The pineal gland releases hormones, so you'd have to have a hormone test, for that. There's no size changes that we've looked at, but the pineal gland is upstream of functions involved with what the caudate putamen does. So it does release hormones that change the function of that. What we've primarily been looking at now, and this is a sort of a follow-on study with a group at Harvard, and you can find the paper that we've already published on it, is that we've been collecting the size variation of individuals and correlating it to either psychological or pathological or physiological states. And we're finding remarkable correlations between the presence or absence of certain features or network. It's called network correlations in the brain. Much like I talked about network correlations in the immune system, it's the network that does the thinking, not the individual pieces that relate to function. What that individual, I think, is really asking for is what's called a functional MRI, or where you would do functional MRI along with brainwave, alpha, beta, gamma, et cetera. That would tell you something about, and then you'd of course you'd want to be looking at hormone levels and stuff like that. So taking blood tests, that would be what would be necessary. But I would do that with somebody who is, let's say, let's call them an on-call experiencer, a medium of some sort.
Right. Oh, you mentioned mediums there, and I know that there was a conversation you were talking about the celebrity medium Tyler Henry on Twitter. Is that something you would actually like to analyze and look into further?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's an extreme case of somebody with something. I don't know what it is, and just being careful. I don't doubt anything about how people are interpreting it, but he definitely has some capability to pick up information from the ether, however you want to define that, either in the real or in the extra real, that is worth understanding. I mean, how could you not? I mean, it's just, I just find it fascinating.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think a lot of people were quite happy to see that conversation happen. So I think a lot of people feel that it's worth looking into.
I get
One more question.
by my mainstream friends. Like, oh my God, you're talking about mediums now. Oh my God, Gary's off the rails. Oh, who cares? Shut up.
Yeah,
I really don't. I don't understand why people feel that they need to corral your thought process and what you can. I mean, half of them, go to church every Sunday and praise some old guy in the sky sitting on a throne, and then they're yelling at me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. So yeah, just one more question, if you don't mind, before we finish. Yorne asks, what did Garry mean by being open when talking about the hitchhiker effect? What are the foundations of that idea, and can that be detected in the brain if someone is more open?
Well, I think, well, the hitchhiker effect is something that happened to a few people, where when the phenomenon seems to occur to certain people, and then they experienced it at the ranch, and then they go home, and then they start experiencing it at home, and other people at home see it. I just find that interesting, and I happen to know the family that this happened to, and I visited their house, and I've seen the stuff that they drew of what it is that they saw. I mean, I haven't seen what they saw,
Sure.
but and it's very credible, and it scared the bejesus out of them. So, it's an experience. Do I necessarily believe what they saw was real? No, but I believe that they experienced it. And that's an important distinction, right? I call him, Jason Colville Vita, or whatever his name is. He tries to pick up, people like him try to pick up on these things, and say that I believe this or he believes that, or it's like, no. And relating the experience that other people have had. I'm not going to demean another person's experience. I'm going to pull it out, and try to understand it, and try to context it in the other things that I think are going on, to try to come up with some explanation that explains the underpinnings of it. It's, I mean, and why not? If I am attracted, and people like me, I think, are attracted to questions that are unanswerable. I'm not interested in stuff that people already know. It's in a book. I can find it on Wikipedia. I'm interested in things that have not been answered. And so why not do it? Why not go after it? Because I get my jollies out of that moment of aha, of having seen various things and putting it together and going, wow, okay, that's it.
That's great. No, that's great. And I think that's what a lot of people like about you, that you're doing the work, you're putting in the time, and it's really appreciated. So we're just about to hit 40 minutes. Thank you for letting me go over slightly. I really do appreciate it, Garry. I wish you all the best.
You and your audience, keep up the faith.
We will. Absolutely. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day, and yeah, take care. Bye-bye now.
Okay, bye-bye. Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys being here. And I'm sorry if I didn't get around to asking all the questions. We were very pushed for time, but I really appreciate Garry being here and talking. I'm going to be back tomorrow where I'll be speaking with researcher David Mahler, who I'm absolutely fascinated by his work. So you can find all my details on my social medias. All the links are in the description. Yeah, guys, enjoy the rest of your day. It's been a very busy one. If you look at the stuff that came out on the debrief today, if you haven't seen it, go and check it out. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you soon. Take care. Goodbye.